Story 1. I love popcorn, but I don't like oily fingers from touching it. I use a keyboard all day and don't want to mess it up. So I just pick up a piece with my tongue. Neat, tidy, simple, and apparently really weird. I don't do it in front of others after my kids called me a lizard. Story 2. Talking to myself constantly. Whether I'm at home alone, at work under my breath, or in the car, I find myself doing it. I'm sure I look crazy, but I just like to think out loud. Story 3. I have an imaginary conversation in my head and, imagining my reply, I mouth what I would say, but no sound comes out. It will be accompanied by facial expressions and shrugs as well. Story 4. My friend was setting up his apartment and invited us to see what we thought about it. Most of it was fine except for his bedroom. In his bedroom, he placed his bed exactly in the middle of the room, allowing us to walk around it freely. Everyone agreed this was odd and made it look like he filmed adult content. Story 5. Remembering something from the past brings tears. Watching my dogs as they engage in their activities often makes me cry, overwhelmed by my love for them and the awareness that their time with us is limited. Story 6. I eat Kit Kat bars without breaking them apart. My friends say it is unusual. I think it is efficient. Story 7. I don't wear my glasses outside. Sometimes, people who know me wave and say hello from a distance, and I don't see them, so I don't acknowledge them. They probably think I'm a stuck-up person. I'm not. I just prefer a blurry world. When I wear my glasses, everything looks dirty, grimy, and too sharp. Story 8. When I am running an inner dialogue and I am deep in thought, I start speaking what my brain is thinking unintentionally. I have encountered people in the hallway of my apartment while doing this, and when I realize what I am doing, I pretend I am singing to myself because that somehow makes it better. Story 9. Sometimes my friends and family notice that I start laughing for no reason. When they ask why, I just say, I don't know, it just feels funny. Nothing actually happens, but somehow it makes sense in my mind. I can't really explain it. Story 10. I have terrible ADHD, so I used to go to the gym and do intense cardio without music or headphones, just staring ahead and trying to count to 100 in my head without losing track. I need to get back to that because I was starting to clear my mind, but it made me look a bit strange. Story 11. I often have arguments with myself and sometimes forget that I'm in public. Many times, parents have guided their child away from me while expressing their discontent. Story 12. I put on socks and shoes when I get dressed. My best friend assures me this is definitely psychopathic behavior. Story 13. Choosing not to be in any relationship or engage in any sexual activity as a woman in her 30s who has experienced many disappointing men is a personal decision. Story 14. I have really bad skin, and since I work with my hands all the time, I wear rubber gloves to protect them while doing more tasks than most people. It may seem like I'm trying to hide my hands, but in reality, if the wind is too harsh, my hands will crack and bleed. Story 15. Choosing to be and remain a single, child-free woman, as well as introverted and reclusive, is my choice. I don't care if living this way is considered bad for me. At least it provides a safe and peaceful existence. Story 16. Toothbrushing. Staring at yourself in the mirror while you scrub the inside of your mouth with a brush and some minty toothpaste. Story 17. I crack my knuckles against my cheek instead of using my other hand when I am doing something else. Sometimes it makes me look a little eccentric. Story 18. I am perfectly capable of not using my phone while sitting in a waiting room or at an airport gate. I can stare at the wall and have my own thoughts without needing external stimulation, and I am perfectly happy doing it. However, I am certain I look insane to observers. Story 19. As I get older, I find myself making a quiet grunting sound frequently. As a result, I often have a sore throat. Story 20. I knock on wood 4 times with my left hand and 4 times with my right hand, repeating this 3 times whenever I have an intrusive thought that I am scared will come true. Story 21. I don't like getting into elevators with people in my apartment building, nor do I like being seen as I exit or which room I am going to when I get off the elevator. I pretend to check my package box while I wait for my own elevator. If I can't avoid it and I am getting off the elevator with others, I pretend to go one way, wait for the door to close, and then head in the actual direction I am going. Story 22. I constantly apologize even when I haven't done anything wrong. Once, I said sorry when someone stepped on my foot. Story 23. I frequently imitate Dr. Zwaberg's whoop 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 sound, especially when I encounter obstacles with my work computer, which is on a wheeled cart. Story 24. I'm looking around for possible exits and figuring out what can be used as a weapon if things go wrong. I play a lot of video games, which didn't help. I worked in a secured mental hospital with a no-hostage protocol. Story 25. I will walk in circles, picking up random items and putting them back in the gas station for up to an hour at times. While doing so, I observe what other people buy, admire their outfits, and notice the way they interact with the cashier. It's my favorite place to people watch and get out of the house because I get to leave with wonderful snacks. Sometimes, when I'm checking out, I'll buy a single shooter of liquor to have a bit of fun. Story 26. I think out loud around other people. If I'm imagining scenarios in my head, I'll narrate parts of the conversation to hear how it sounds. I also do this when I'm upset. I bet people think I'm crazy, but I'm aware that I'm doing it. I don't see or hear things. It's just something I stopped caring about regarding how it makes me look. Story 27. I am often emotionless, but when I do feel emotions, I find myself smiling or even giggling. I don't quite understand it. Whether I'm happy, anxious, angry, awkward, or experiencing any other emotion, I start smiling uncontrollably. I am not trying to force myself to do this. Story 28. One of my worst habits is staying calm and composed in chaotic situations. People often think I am either too detached or hiding something, but I am just good at keeping my emotions in check. Story 29. Talking while walking is a measure of how hard I'm pushing myself due to my heart condition. If I'm stumbling over my words, I need to slow down and focus on my walking technique. Story 30. I use my hands to help me calculate math problems by pretending to draw on an imaginary whiteboard. Story 31. When I've finally had enough and it's bottled up, I put everyone in their place and call them out on it. People don't like that. Story 32. I am autistic, so sometimes I will stare in a way that may seem a bit unusual or intense. Story 33. When they look at something, their eyes immediately focus on the subject. After a brief pause, their head slowly rotates until their eyes are centered. Story 34. Not a habit I oversee, but I found myself in a neurodivergent zone. I was just staring right in front of me until I snapped out of it. Story 35. Picking up trash while walking. I will carry around any trash I find during my walks until I locate a trash or recycling bin to dispose of it. Story 36. Having a movie quote for every situation is great, but that's the way the cookie crumbles, right? Bruce Almighty. Story 37. Talking to my dogs as if they understand me and can respond. We discussed this, Fido. Barking at the mailman is rude and unnecessary. It doesn't solve anything. Story 38. I'm not very good at refraining from talking to my TV shows. I also have conversations with my dogs about life, which might seem a bit unusual. Story 39. As someone who has unintentionally surprised people, eating a Kit Kat bar whole is quite an experience. No nibbling around the edges, no breaking it up, just biting into it like a Snickers or Hershey bar. Story 40. The way I stand. I have double-jointed ankles, and I unconsciously twist them backward when I am standing. Everyone I know thinks it is unusual. Story 41. Remembering things about people that they mention in passing can make others think I'm crazy or a stalker. I just have a tendency to remember details, like the fact that you use the same mascara as my mother. My memory might struggle with my times tables, but I will definitely remember your McDonald's order. Story 42. When an animal crosses the street in front of my car, I like to roll down my windows and yell at it to go home. Story 43. I organize the seasonings in my cabinet by height and usage, primarily by height. It is arranged from tall to short, from left to right on every shelf. Story 44. I have had a long-standing habit of watching the national evening news. I really need to stop doing that for a couple of years because all it does is frustrate me. Story 45. In the subway, where there is no signal, I find myself gasping or giggling at my ebook on my phone, receiving strange looks from my aunt. Story 46. I take my macro counting seriously and have received some odd looks while at restaurants. The good thing is I have lost 18 pounds, so it's working. Story 47. I eat almost all my food with a fork. I prefer bowls over plates. I do not like ketchup, but I love mustard. Story 48. In my junior year of high school, I used to bring a glass of juice to school with me every morning and finish drinking it in my first hour art class. The teacher didn't mind us having non-water beverages because it was art class, and she was cool. However, I was eventually seen by the vice principal, who asked why I brought a glass cup to school. I replied that it was for my juice. They informed me it had to be a closable container and not glass for safety reasons. Looking back, I probably looked a little strange. Story 49. I have full conversations with my cats, using baby voices and sometimes having heated discussions. The next step is likely to create scenarios where they have complete conversations with each other, without my involvement. Story 50. I rinse or wipe off all containers that may have accumulated dust, such as soda cans, milk jugs, and glass jars or bottles. Story 51. Well, not me, but I knew someone who collected dead bugs. Not individual specimens to mount, but hundreds of dead bugs in jars grouped by species. In her locker at work. I am confident she is not a psychopath. In fact, she's one of the sweetest people I've known. It didn't seem that weird once you got to know her. But at first, Story 52, I was talking to coworkers about how I feel deceased pets should just be discarded and not buried. They asked me if I felt the same way about humans. They did not like my answer. Story 53. I talk to myself in stores and people stop and stare. Lately, I've been trying to do it like a ventriloquist and not move my lips. This is the one that concerns me. Like when I'm cooking or packing my husband's lunch, I have this constant running dialogue in my head. I will tell myself repeatedly what exactly I put in his lunch or what I included in a recipe or what my meal plan actually was. I do have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and take medications for that, but I guess this is an obsessive-compulsive disorder thing. Story 54. I was stuck at home for 3 months alone after ACL surgery and began talking to myself just to hear another voice. I can't seem to break the habit. Story 55. I laugh when people say something I find uncomfortable, or I go silent and have a dull expression. They often think I'm not interested. Story 56. I prefer biting into ice cream instead of licking it and enjoy eating cold food, like pizza, without the need to microwave it. I also pour the milk into the bowl before the cereal. I think it's normal, but some people online say it's unusual behavior. Story 57. Forgetting you're in public while listening to music and starting to dance or sing along because you're enjoying it so much. Story 58. Hiking uphill for 5 hours straight during trips and getting into a high-intensity cardio mode when I'm bored. Story 59. I never thought this was unusual, but my husband made me feel crazy when I told him about it. When I eat, I bite the food in half and chew half on each side of my mouth. With something like M&Ms, I have to have the same number on each side. Story 60. Conversations with myself in public and at my workplace. I play characters against myself out of boredom, possibly because I grew up with games featuring narrating characters. Sometimes it serves as a way to think more clearly, and other times it's just for fun. Story 61. When I have cereal, I pour milk into a bowl, add a small amount of cereal, eat it, pour in more cereal, and continue this process until the milk runs out. Story 62. Loneliness. People assume I am a horrible person or a psychopath because I am lonely. The fact is, I hung out with the wrong crowd growing up. After I distanced myself from them, I started working 2 jobs and focused on myself. My relationship took everything from me, and after being hurt so much, it became a habit to be alone. Now I have developed social anxiety, which is really the icing on the cake. Story 63. Writing in my phone's notes app things that happen or are said throughout the day so I can reflect on them later. Usually, these are just short, incomplete sentences or phrases to jog my memory. for various reasons, whether it was an interesting interaction I had or something I witnessed. Perhaps I said or did something I was proud of, or sometimes it was simply because something was funny and I want to remember it later. I'm curious to see if anyone else does this. If someone saw my notes, I might seem a bit crazy. Story 64. When I buy something, I can't stand that it is still in its packaging. It also feels like excess baggage to carry. I have to open it immediately. Story 65. I eat my hot dogs sideways, like a corn cob. My parents told me I have always done it, but I have no idea why. I'm almost 30 and still do it. People give me the weirdest looks and I tell them, doing it this way gives me twice the hot dog. Instead of 4 to 5 bites, I get 8 to 10 this way. The explanation never helps the odd visual. Story 66. Playing out bizarre scenarios in my head, my lips start to move with the mental dialogue. I look around. No one saw. I am safe for another day. Story 67. Realizing you're walking the wrong way in public, then just turning around and walking in the opposite direction. Bonus. Asking a stranger for directions, then remembering you need to go somewhere else while they're explaining, and simply ignoring them when you leave. Story 68. Walking alone at night and singing. I used to do that when I worked the night shift. Kept people away. I am a woman. Story 69. Stumbling across an old friend's profile on social media after a few years and scrolling through their posts to catch up can be quite nostalgic. You may find yourself liking and commenting on a few photos along the way. Your friend has liked your photo. Your friend has reacted to your photo. Your friend has commented on your photo from 2016. Your friend has liked your photo again. Your friend has reacted to your photo. Your friend has poked you. Story 70. I think of someone from my past who upset me, and I find myself saying foul person or foul individual out loud. I'm usually alone, but I did this in front of a relative and had to clarify that I wasn't referring to them, just to the voices in my head. I'm pretty sure they are planning to contact my doctor to discuss getting me on medication. Story 71. I am responding out loud to something I said to myself in my head. It is still a solo conversation, but for some reason, my responses are vocal while my questions are internal. Story 72. I write down everything I do each hour. It helps me stay focused. After 5 years of collecting data, I feel a bit unconventional, and I love it. Story 73. I have a unique habit of smelling objects whenever someone hands them to me. For example, if I pick up a hammer in a hardware store, I'll smell it. While my sense of smell isn't particularly strong, and most things don't have a scent, I do this to create an impression that people find unusual. Story 74. I remember everything. A new coworker told me their favorite food at the mixer, so I brought it for their birthday a few months later. I was literally called a stalker. Story 75. I buy a variety of cleaning supplies at once from Dollarama. It may seem a bit extreme to check out with bleach, masks, and gloves. Story 76. I go to the park 3 minutes from my apartment at odd times to avoid the children and listen to my music while swinging. I'm 19 years old, so people walking by look at me strangely, laugh, stare in confusion, or seem somewhat worried. I just think it's fun, and the movement helps me get more immersed in the music. Story 77. I talk to myself when I am stressed. It helps me organize my thoughts. Several times, my wife has walked into the room while I am having a full conversation with myself. It must make me look crazy. Story 78. I crack every bone in my body, including my neck, wrists, back, toes, foot, and heel. However, the best of all is my thigh bone and hip, which makes the most wonderful or awful crack, depending on whether you are me or an onlooker. Story 79. I work at a psychiatric ward. For reasons I can't explain, I really like it. I enjoy working with that set of patients. They love joking around and laughing. This sets me apart from most of the staff who dislike their jobs and act like it's a bother. Here I am, smiling and acting like I'm at home. Additionally, I'm neurodivergent, so a lot of the time I'm masking, which works sometimes, but the mask slips. Thus, I stand out. A couple of months ago, a patient said, "I can't figure out why you work here. You just seem a little too chipper. After he repeated it several times, I finally asked what he meant. He responded, "You're too happy to be here, so you're either faking it or you're one of us." Later that same night, a paranoid patient in psychosis kept acting like I was absolutely terrifying to her. She was paranoid about many things, but me in particular. She thought I was a literal demon. At one point, she approached me and, through gritted teeth, said, "You're not like the others. You're something different." "What are you?" I would not normally say this to a patient, but it seemed appropriate. I replied, "I'm autistic and I'm tired, so I'm having trouble masking. That's what is off about me." She stared at me for about 10 seconds, exclaimed, "What?" then nodded a few times and walked away. After that, she was just okay with me and went to bed. In summary, patients occasionally think I'm a demon because I'm neurodivergent and I like my job. Story 80. Eating without watching anything or using my phone. Just sitting down and quietly eating while thinking. Story 81. Write a list of people who have wronged you, then cross their names off with red lipstick when they apologize. Story 82. In private, I eat using my hands for most foods, soup being the exception, which I usually drink from a mug. I eat spaghetti, salad, sushi, and steak without utensils. I cannot explain why, but it tastes better to me. I would probably be institutionalized if I started doing this in public. Story 83. I have to be covered in clothing from head to toe to be able to fall asleep. From the feet up. Compression socks, leggings, a turtleneck, compression gloves, a bonnet, and an eye mask. The only thing exposed is my mouth. I can't fall asleep without all of these items. Do I have sensory issues? Probably, I don't know. Luckily, I'm married now, but it was always interesting trying to explain this to someone who wanted to sleep over. Story 84. I was born with essential tremors, and 3 decades later, my shaking can cause me anxiety because I fear that others may misconstrue my tremors as a symptom of drug use. This anxiety leads me to crack my knuckles and fingers in an attempt to relieve my stress, which ultimately makes the situation worse. Story 85. Zoning out and staring blankly while listening to a podcast makes me feel like the person next to me in class thinks I'm a weirdo. Story 86. I often rock back and forth, which makes people uncomfortable. I also find myself repeating the same word under my breath. Story 87. My harmless habit has labeled me a psychopath many times. I do not like my Oreos dipped in milk. I understand. I'm putting my straitjacket back on now. Story 88. Mallow cookies. I gently remove the chocolate coating and eat it, then peel off the marshmallow and eat that, followed by the graham cracker part separately. Story 89. When you're fighting for your life between heavy sets at the gym, you can stare off into the void and end up getting really caught in that gaze. You only get into the stare if there's a person directly in your line of sight, making it seem like you're intensely staring at them. I miss my gym that was open all day. Story 90. I have organized every photo and video my friends and I have taken since 2008 into Dropbox albums by year, date, event, and category. Story 91. If I eat a pizza at a restaurant using a fork and knife, I will start from the center and work my way outwards towards the crust, which I might not eat. I am creating a hole in the pizza to mirror the one I have in my soul. Story 92. I talk to myself at times and laugh at inappropriate moments, especially when discussing a sad topic. I don't want anyone to catch me crying, or else she would be upset and say, "That's not funny." Story 93. I talk to myself and say a lot of unhinged things. Sometimes I laugh at the reality of my life. Other times, I comment on how I feel. I promise I'm not unstable. Story 94. Apparently, I talk to myself while I'm alone in my own home. I will never forget when I told one of my friends that I do this all the time, and she was really weirded out and even called me a psychopath. At first, I felt embarrassed, but then I realized she was just very judgmental, so it didn't matter. Story 95. Laughing uncontrollably whenever I do something silly or need to be serious. I will be sitting in the middle of a quiet room and suddenly break out laughing for no reason. Story 96. Apparently, I learned a lot from what a former boss told me. I was told, and I quote, "I love you. You act like you're completely insane, and you do it because people leave you alone if they think you're crazy." It's genuinely the only time in my life I've truly felt seen and understood, but at the same time, I can't help but wonder which of my traits might come off as psycho to others. Probably the misanthropy. Story 97. Sitting in a waiting room and reading a paperback or hardback book or completing a word search, as opposed to being on my phone. Story 98. I cannot stand watching people waste food. I often ask if I can take their leftovers home to give to my crows. That mustard jar has at least 5 more good uses if you add water. Do you need a container? That is a fine meal. Don't throw it away. I don't understand why I feel this way, but the inability to see waste in the face of extreme excess makes me feel unwell. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.